Dream of the Red Chamber Chapter 98.
You likely already know the grand sweeping arc of this story.
Yeah, you know the deception. You know the tragic love triangle.
Exactly. So we're exploring the raw sociology of how human beings process unbearable grief. We're looking at the mechanics of how we handle that clash between a harsh reality and a comforting illusion.
And, maybe most importantly, the terrifying, cold-blooded pragmatism of family dynamics when an institution's survival is on the line.
So true. And the architecture of this source material is genuinely astounding.
It really is, because it doesn't just operate as a narrative. It forces you, as the reader, to track a singular trauma across 3 distinct simultaneous frequencies.
Frequencies, I like that. Break that down for us.
Well, first, you have an acute medical crisis. Then you have this profound metaphysical journey into a highly subversive afterlife.
Which is just wild, by the way.
It's incredible. And finally, you have a masterclass in political crisis management within a highly powerful, deeply entrenched family structure.
And these 3 layers, they don't just exist side by side, right?
No, not at all. They actively interfere with each other. The medical impacts the political, the metaphysical impacts the medical. It's a complete web.
So let's start with the physical fallout of the deception. Baoyu has just realized he didn't marry Daiyu.
The veil is lifted.
Right, literally and figuratively. He sees Baochai, and the psychological shock is so absolute that it instantly manifests as a catastrophic physical breakdown.
He basically blue screens.
Yes, he sees his father, Jia Zheng, and his brain simply shuts off. He falls into a stupor. He refuses food.
The text tells us he loses touch with reality to the point of not even recognizing the people in his own room.
He is, for all intents and purposes, catatonic.
Completely unresponsive to his environment.
But the family's reaction to this catatonia is where the machinery really reveals itself. I mean, the sole male heir is slipping into a coma.
And instead of halting everything to save his life, what do?
They decide to physically prop him up in bed.
Yeah.
They are literally attempting to visually manifest his hell. It's like they're staging a play in a burning theater.
It's an exercise in sheer institutional denial. I mean, they are dealing with a profound psychological rupture, but they're treating it as a public relations vulnerability.
Which brings us to the return on the 9th day ritual.
Oh, this part is just agonizing to read.
It really is. This is the detail that completely exposes the family's priorities. So the newlyweds are supposed to visit the bride's family, Aunt Shu in this case.
A standard post-wedding social obligation.
Right. But Baoyu is essentially unresponsive. He's practically a mannequin at this point.
Yeah, he's hollowed out.
But grandmother Jia and Lady Wang, they are so panicked about Aunt Shu Yanzi losing face that they physically load this comatose young man into a small sedan chair.
They literally haul him over there.
They have servants carry him across the compound just to fulfill the obligation. I look at this scene and I have to ask, why on earth is the preservation of this specific marriage ritual more critical than the survival of the groom himself?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at what the Jia family actually is. It's not a family in the modern emotional sense.
All right, it's not about warm, fuzzy feeling.
Not at all. It is a political and economic conglomerate. In this patriarchal, aristocratic structure, ritual isn't just window dressing.
It's the foundation.
Exactly. Ritual is the load-bearing pillar of their social and political alliances. If you fail to perform the ritual, you aren't just being rude.
What are you doing then?
You are signaling institutional weakness to your allies and your enemies.
Oh, wow. So the concept of phase here isn't about mere embarrassment.
No, it is about hard social capital. Aunt Sue's social capital is intimately tied to the public success of this union.
So if the Jia family fails to produce the groom on the 9th day, they are publicly defaulting on a social contract.
Precisely. The institution must survive, and the institution survives through the rigorous performance of duty, completely regardless of the emotional or physical state of its individual components.
And Baochai, the new bride,
Yeah.
she is fully integrated into this operating system, isn't she?
She's the perfect product of it.
The text points out that, as a new daughter-in-law, she is structurally silenced. Like, she can't openly criticize her mother, Aunt Sue, who is foolishly forcing the issue of this ritual visit.
Right, Aunt Sue is demanding they show up, and Baochai actually sees the absurdity of it.
She does. She internalizes the complaint, yet outwardly she complies flawlessly. She is just the ultimate stoic asset.
She completely understands the assignment. I mean, she is trapped in a domestic tragedy, but she navigates the expectations of a society that demands the subordination of the individual to the collective.
So her silence isn't passivity.
No, it's an active, disciplined performance of her prescribed role. She's doing exactly what the machine requires her to do.
But the performance can only mask the physiological reality for so long, right?
Yeah.
Baoyu is actively dying.
His body is shutting down.
So the family brings in their elite physicians, the men who treat the aristocracy, and they are completely baffled. They cannot stabilize him.
They're totally out of their depth.
And then we get this fascinating introduction, Dr. Bien. He goes by the alias Zien.
A fantastic character.
Yeah, and he isn't some elite court physician. He is a poor doctor living in a ruined temple outside the city walls.
He's entirely outside the system.
Right. They bring him in, he checks Baoyu's pulse, and he delivers a diagnosis that is so layered, it reads more like a psychological profile than a medical chart.
The introduction of Dr. Bai is a brilliant piece of sociological critique by the author. I mean, think about it. The doctors embedded within the elite system fail because they are treating the physical symptoms of an aristocratic lifestyle.
They're looking for gout or rich food imbalances.
Exactly. They are looking for standard issues. Dr. Bai, standing outside that system of wealth and illusion, is able to see the raw human condition.
He sees what's actually happening.
He recognizes that the disease isn't physical in origin at all. It is an existential collapse.
I want to read his exact diagnosis for you because the terminology is just incredible. He states that the root of the illness is, quote, extreme joy and sorrow intermingled, internal injury and external affection, irregular diet and suppressed righteous energy, unquote, which is the translation for kwai.
It's a remarkably precise diagnosis for the time.
We really need to unpack the mechanics of this. How does traditional Chinese medicine at the time view the intersection of extreme joy and sorrow to the point where it becomes an actual internal injury?
Well, in traditional medical theory of the era, emotions are not abstract feelings confined to the brain.
Okay, so they aren't just thoughts.
No, they are physical forces that act directly upon specific organ systems. So joy is associated with the heart. When joy is appropriate, it allows energy to flow smoothly.
But Baoyu didn't experience appropriate joy.
Right. He experienced extreme joy, that manic, overwhelming high he felt when he believed he was marrying his soulmate, Daiyu. That level of extreme joy actually scatters the spirit. It causes the Kia to disperse chaotically.
Oh, wow. And then the sorrow hits.
Exactly. Sorrow is associated with the lungs, and extreme sorrow consumes and dissolves the Qi.
So within a span of hours, Baoyu's system is subjected to a violent scattering of energy, followed immediately by a catastrophic depletion of it.
Yes, it's essentially a massive biochemical whiplash.
A profound whiplash.
The internal injury Dr. B identifies is the actual physical damage to the organ systems caused by this emotional violence.
And what about the suppressed righteous energy? The blocked Kai?
That happens because his mind is utterly incapable of reconciling the two realities. The cognitive dissonance is so severe that his life force literally stops flowing.
So the body is effectively shutting down its own operating system because the mind refuses to interface with the waking world.
That's exactly it. It is a stunningly accurate depiction of what we would now classify as a severe psychosomatic crisis or a conversion disorder.
And Dr. B's medicinal brew actually does have an effect. It clears the physiological blockage just enough for Baoyu's consciousness to surface.
He wakes up in the middle of the night.
Yeah, but the medicine only clears the hardware, right? The software is still completely corrupted by grief.
The physical block is gone, but the delusion is still there.
Exactly. So the moment he has a sliver of lucidity, he begins interrogating his environment. He finds himself alone with Sharon, his incredibly loyal maid, and he starts asking a series of questions that are just agonizing to read.
Because you know he's putting the pieces together wrong.
Right. He remembers the wedding setup. He asks, how was Daiyu driven away by Bao Chai? Why did Bao Chai take her place?
He thinks it was a coup.
Yes. And then he asks the most devastating question of all. He says, how is Lin crying right now?
Oh, that breaks my heart every time.
He is operating under the absolute conviction that Daiyu is alive, somewhere in the compound, weeping over this systemic betrayal.
He is projecting his own agony entirely onto her. He is holding on to the narrative of their shared suffering because, in a strange, twisted way, that shared suffering is the very last connection they have.
That's all he has left.
Right. If she is crying for him, then their bond still exists in the physical world.
Right. And Sharon's response is the classic Jia family defensive maneuver. She lies.
Of course she does.
She actively suppresses the truth. She tells him, oh, Lin is just sick. She is trying to de-escalate the emotional temperature of the room.
She thinks she's protecting him.
She really does. And Baoyu responds with this peak romantic fatalism. He says, well, I'm dying. and she's dying, so just put us in the same empty room so we can die together.
Which is tragic, but Jiren represents the conventional wisdom of caregiving within this environment.
To keep everything calm.
Yeah, you don't agitate a dying man, you construct a gentle fiction. You maintain the illusion to keep the patient from crashing.
But then Bao Chai enters the room.
Here we go.
She overhears this entire exchange, and her reaction completely shatters that conventional wisdom.
She takes a totally different approach.
She bypasses Jiren entirely, completely ignores Baoyu's romantic fatalism, and drops a nuclear bomb on the situation.
She doesn't hold back at all.
She looks directly at him and says, Lin Daiyu is already dead.
Boom.
Now, I have to push back on how we interpret this moment. I know some readings view this as a necessary, almost heroic intervention.
It's heavily debated.
Right. But looking at the text, Bao Chai comes in with a verbal scalpel and slices the wound completely open without anesthesia. She violently strips away the only delusion keeping his heart beating.
It's a massive risk.
How is this not just an incredibly reckless, perhaps even slightly vindictive, move to secure her own position as his wife?
It's vital to challenge Bao Chai's motives here, because you're right, the cruelty of the act is undeniable. It is harsh.
Extremely harsh.
However, if we examine the text's internal logic, particularly her internal monologue, the strategy is framed as a desperate, calculated medical intervention.
Okay, walk me through her logic.
Well, the text explicitly notes her reasoning. She knows that Baoyu's illness is born entirely of his obsession with Daiyu.
Okay.
As long as he believes Daiyu is alive, his spirit will remain tethered to an impossible hope. He will linger in this agonizing limbo and eventually waste away.
So she thinks the hope is killing him.
Exactly. Bao Chai's theory is that the only way to cure the physical blockages Dr. B identified is to, and this is a direct quote, make him hurt to the point of absolute severance.
Hurt to the point of absolute severance. That is a terrifying philosophy of care.
It is brutal exposure therapy. She forces his brain to confront the absolute finality of death.
She just shoves him off the cliff.
Yes. By introducing the absolute worst-case scenario, she is trying to force his scattered spirit to unify around a single, undeniable truth.
But does she benefit from it?
Now, does she also benefit by erasing her rival? Undoubtedly.
Yeah, it's very convenient for her.
It is. The genius of the character is that her pragmatic societal duty to save her husband and her personal advancement perfectly align in this moment.
But she doesn't stop with the truth of Daiyu's death, does she?
Oh no, she immediately pivots to an aggressive intellectual dismantling of his romantic despair.
She weaponizes his own family against him.
It's a masterstroke.
She gives him this ruthlessly logical lecture about why he isn't allowed to die. She tells him, the old lady loves you, she's in her 80s. Your mother poured her life's blood into raising you.
She lays it on thick.
If you die, what happens to them? Even heaven won't allow you to die. I mean, she is using Confucian filial piety, which is the foundational moral operating system of their society, as a guilt trip to override his personal grief.
Precisely. She is representing the social order stepping into the room to crush the individual's romantic rebellion.
Wow.
She's telling him that his life does not belong to him, and it certainly does not belong to Daiyu. His life is the property of his grandmother and his mother.
So dying of a broken heart isn't romantic to her.
No. To die of a broken heart is not just tragic in this society, it is the ultimate act of filial treason. It is a dereliction of duty.
And the immediate aftermath of her speech is just chaos. Jiren and the older women in the room are horrified.
They think she's killed him.
They think Bao Chai has just committed murder via blunt force honesty. They are terrified of the raw, unmanaged emotion. But the shock therapy actually triggers something entirely different.
It doesn't kill his body.
Right. When Baoyu hears those words, he doesn't just cry. He cries out, he faints, and the text describes his consciousness physically detaching. He is literally knocked out of the waking world.
And this plunges us directly into the metaphysical architecture of the story.
We transition instantly from a tense domestic confrontation into a profoundly dense philosophical exploration of the afterlife.
And the nature of the soul itself.
So Baoyu finds himself wandering in absolute darkness. He eventually meets someone who informs him that he is in the Yinsi, the underworld, the path to the Yellow Springs.
The classic realm of the dead.
And Baoyu, who is still entirely single-minded, says, I heard an old friend died. I came to find her. Lin Daiyu from Suzu.
He's so relentless.
And the underworld official looks at this grieving young man and lets out a cold, dismissive laugh.
That laugh is chilling. It is the sound of the cosmos rejecting human sentimentality.
Like the universe just doesn't care.
Exactly. The official subsequent speech is a masterclass in philosophical syncretism. It blends Taoist and Buddhist concepts to completely dismantle Baoyu's worldview.
What does he tell him?
He explains the mechanics of the human soul. He states that for normal humans, the soul gathers to form a body in life, and upon death, it scatters as breath.
It just dissipates.
Yes. The Hun and the Po, which are the spiritual and physical souls, they just dissipate back into the universe. There is no enduring individual ego left to find.
Which immediately destroys the Western or even the popular romantic expectation of an afterlife reunion.
Completely.
There's no Romeo and Juliet ending here where they meet in the clouds.
Exactly. But the official goes further. He says, but Lin Daiyu is not normal. She is different from humans in life and ghosts in death.
So she didn't scatter.
Right. He says she have no soul and no spirit to be found here in the underworld. He reveals that Daiyu has returned to the Taixu illusion, the realm of the great void.
We really need to clarify what the Taixu illusion implies here, because it sounds like a fancy version of heaven, but it's much more complicated than that, isn't it?
Much more. The Taixu illusion is not a paradise where you hang out with your ancestors and play harps.
Right. It's not the good place.
No. In the cosmology of the novel, it is the origin point of divine spirits and the ultimate repository of earthly karma, but it operates on a plane of profound detachment.
Detachment is the key word.
Yes. See, Daiyu was originally a divine crimson pearl flower, and Baoyu was a divine stone. They incarnated into the human world to settle a karmic debt of tears.
She owed him tears.
Right. And by dying, Daiyu has finished paying that debt. She has shed her human avatar. She has transcended the mortal cycle of suffering and attachment.
So what does that mean for Baoyu?
It means Baoyu's earthly, passionate grief is completely irrelevant to her now. She is no longer the Lin Daiyu he is looking for. She is fundamentally disconnected from him.
So Baoyu is told that mortal human souls dissolve and divine souls transcend. But Baoyu, who is incredibly sharp even when his soul is wandering outside his body, catches a logical inconsistency here.
He's always questioning.
He essentially asks the official, wait, if mortal souls just scatter like breath, and divine souls go to the great void, why does this massive bureaucratic underworld even exist? Who is it for?
It's a brilliant question.
And the official's answer is wildly subversive. He basically admits that hell is a social construct.
It is one of the most radical critiques of religious institutions in classical literature.
It really is.
The official openly states, the underworld exists if you say it exists, and it doesn't if you say it doesn't.
Mind-blowing.
He explains that it was established by the world to warn the living.
So it's just cosmic law enforcement.
Basically, yes.
It's a mechanism designed entirely to scare the living into behaving. The official even lists who it's for. He says it's for people who don't know their place, the greedy, the violent, and very specifically pointed at Baoyu, those who die by suicide or self-harm out of excessive passion.
The author is satirizing the way religious doctrines of the afterlife are weaponized by the state and the family to enforce earthly compliance.
It's all about control.
Exactly. The official is telling Baoyu that his desire to abandon his life and wander the underworld for love is classified as a sin of self-harm.
So even the afterlife wants him to go back to work.
Yes. The metaphysical universe is actively reinforcing the patriarchal demands of the Jia family. Even in death, there is no escape from duty.
It's incredible. The universe itself acts as a massive corporate HR department telling him to get back to his desk.
That is a perfect analogy.
And to enforce this, the official literally pulls a stone from his sleeve and strikes Baoyu directly in the heart to wake him up.
The symbolism of the stone striking the heart is the metaphysical climax of his journey.
Because he is a stone.
Right. Remember, Baoyu's essential pre-incarnation nature is a sentient stone. So this underworld official throwing a stone is a profound metaphor. It is his own core reality, his fundamental nature, violently striking his physical heart to snap his wandering consciousness back into its biological container.
And the transition back to reality is incredibly jarring. He wakes up in a cold sweat. He opens his eyes, and the pitch-black void of the underworld is replaced by the hyper-vivid reality of his bedroom.
The sensory overload must be intense.
Oh, absolutely. He sees the red lanterns, the bright moon, the heavy silk and embroidery. He is slammed back into the prosperous world, and his mind is suddenly terrifyingly clear.
The fever has broken.
Baoshai's shock therapy, combined with the metaphysical rejection, it worked. The illusion is broken. His spirit is unified by the acceptance of defeat.
He realizes that his romantic rebellion is futile.
There's nowhere to run.
Right. He cannot follow her into death because there is nowhere to follow her to. He is forced to accept the physical reality of his survival.
But the narrative doesn't let you, the reader, rest there.
Oh, not at all.
To ensure you truly comprehend the weight of the loss Baoyu must now accept, the text executes a brilliant structural pivot. It pulls us out of Baoyu's awakened state and throws us backward in time.
The split-screen tragedy.
Yes, the split screen. We are taken back to show the exact reality of what happened, while Baoyu was completely oblivious, undergoing his wedding rituals. We shift to Daiyu's final moments in the Jiaxiang Pavilion.
And the contrast is sickening.
It really is. While Baoyu's courtyard is a chaotic, deafening swirl of red lanterns, music, and deceptive joy, Daiyu's environment is stark, cold, and profoundly isolated.
A ghost town over there.
Who was with her at the end? Just her intensely loyal maid Ziwan, her widowed sister-in-law Li Wan, and a few minor servants, the powerful matriarchs, Grandmother Jia, Lady Wang, Xifeng. They are nowhere to be seen.
This isolation is not accidental. It is structural.
What do you mean by structural?
Well, the Jiaxiang Pavilion is physically tucked away in the garden, but Daiyu is now emotionally and institutionally isolated.
Ah, I see.
Throughout the novel, she was the beloved guest, a potential candidate for the core position of Baoyu's wife. But once the family's political and economic calculus shifts...
Once they pick Bao Chai.
Right. Once Bao Chai is deemed the necessary pragmatic choice to secure the family's alliances, Daiyu ceases to be a viable asset.
And in this society, an institutionally irrelevant asset is simply discarded.
Thrown away.
The details of her passing are just agonizing. She is fading in and out of consciousness. The text notes that she grasps Ziwan's hand tightly, refusing to let go.
It's her anchor.
It's a desperate cling to the very last thread of genuine, uncalculated human connection she possesses. She says to Ziwan, "I have no family here."
A devastating realization.
And then she insists, "My body is clean." She demands her coffin be sent back south to her actual home. She wants absolutely nothing to remain in the north with the Jia family.
She is rejecting them in her final moments.
Completely. And then we get to her final unfinished words.
The unfinished syllable, it is a focal point of endless literary analysis.
She uses her last breath to call out, "Baoyu, Baoyu, you are so." And the syllable in the original text is how. And then she breaks into a cold sweat. Her eyes roll back, and she is gone. It's the ultimate narrative cliffhanger. You, as the reader, are left staring at that single word.
Because it can mean so many things.
Right. Does it mean you are so cruel for abandoning me? Does it mean you are so good, like an expression of absolute forgiveness? Or is it you are so foolish for falling for the family's trap? The text forces you to bear the weight of that ambiguity. There is no closure.
The author refuses to sanitize the tragedy with a neat final sentiment. The ambiguity of Helm Bermuda encapsulates the entirety of their complex, incredibly fraught relationship.
It really does.
But if we look closely, the text does provide an answer, not in dialogue, but in the sensory environment surrounding her death.
Oh, the soundscape.
Yes, the aesthetic of tragedy here, the Baoyu, is masterful.
As she dies, the text explicitly points our attention to the soundscape outside her window.
Exactly. As her life force dissipates, what drifts over the compound walls?
The music.
The faint, unmistakable sounds of joyous wedding music from Baoyu's courtyard.
And almost immediately, that music is drowned out by the desolate sound of the wind rustling the bamboo and the shadows of the moon shifting across the cold walls.
The juxtaposition is devastating. This isn't merely a sad death of a young woman. It is a death that is actively marginalized by the family's machinery.
They're celebrating while she dies.
She dies as an orphan guest, while a few courtyards away, the very people who claim to love her are celebrating the continuation of their own power.
It's chilling.
The fading life in one room and the mandated institutionalized joy in the other serves as a savage critique of a society that values institutional continuity over individual human life.
So Daiyu passes away precisely at the hour the marriage is sealed. And how the family handles this information leads us directly into the cold calculus of crisis management.
This is where Xifeng shines.
Yes, the first person of authority to discover the death is Xifeng, the operational manager of the Jia household. Now, Xifeng is often painted as a villain, but her reaction here is purely functional.
We must look at Xifeng not as a cruel sister-in-law, but as a wartime CEO dealing with a failing corporation.
Right.
When she hears Daiyu has died, she does shed tears. She isn't entirely devoid of humanity, but her overriding emotional response is logistical panic regarding the timing.
She realizes the institutional liability of the moment. She literally calculates the risk, saying, "This is so burdensome. If we don't report it today, it's unacceptable. But if we do report it, I'm afraid the old lady won't be able to handle the shock."
She's managing the domino effect.
Exactly. She knows that Grandmother Jia and Lady Wang are already highly stressed about Baoyu's catatonia. Dropping the news of Daiyu's death right now could literally trigger a secondary medical crisis in the matriarchs.
And if the matriarchs fall, the political cover for the entire family collapses.
It all comes down.
Shifeng's crisis management is flawless. She acknowledges the tragedy, but she prioritizes the balance sheet of the family's stability.
It's all numbers to her.
Daiyu is treated like an underperforming research and development department that just went bankrupt, while Baoyu is the core product line.
Wow, that's dark.
When the company is facing ruin, you quietly liquidate the R&D department to ensure the core product survives. It isn't malice, it is a cold, necessary pragmatism.
So she contains the news and drip feeds it to the elders to mitigate the shock.
Precisely.
And when Grandmother Jia finally processes the news, her reaction strips away every last comforting illusion you might have about family love.
It's a massive gut punch.
Initially, she weeps. She beats her chest and says, "It's my fault, I ruined her." But then she addresses Daiyu's spirit directly, and she says something so blunt it takes your breath away.
It's so hard to read.
She says, "You are my granddaughter, but compared to Baoyu, he is closer to me. If something happens to Baoyu, how can I face his father?"
That single sentence articulates the brutal hierarchy of affection that governs the Jia clan.
I mean, she is actively ranking the human worth of her grandchildren, while one of them is lying dead on a bed not 100 yards away.
It is shocking to modern sensibilities, but Grandmother Jia is merely vocalizing the silent algorithm of their world.
The algorithm.
Yes. Baoyu is the male heir. He is the lineage. He is the future political standing of the clan. He is essential infrastructure.
And Daiyu.
Daiyu, as the daughter of a deceased female relative, is an outsider on the female line. She was a beloved luxury.
The luxury.
In times of prosperity, the institution could afford to indulge in the luxury of her poetry and her presence. But in a time of existential crisis, the luxury is the first thing jettisoned.
And Lady Wang's solution to their collective guilt is the ultimate corporate cover-up.
Of course it is.
She says her lifespan was fated. There's nothing we can do but give her a top-tier funeral. They're literally throwing money at their moral failing.
It's PR.
They couldn't give Daiyu the life she wanted. They couldn't even give her the dignity of honesty while she was dying. But they will absolutely buy the most expensive coffin on the market to sanitize their own guilt.
The top-tier funeral is a performance for the living, not a comfort for the dead.
It just makes them feel better.
It restores the family's face. It proves to the outside world that they are benevolent, masking the internal rot that caused the tragedy in the first place.
Which brings us to the final movement of this chapter. With the family's priorities brutally reaffirmed, Baoyu is finally allowed to confront the physical reality of his loss.
He has to see it.
He's recovering physically, but he is spiritually hollowed out. He demands to be taken to Daiyu's coffin in the Jiaxiang pavilion. The family hesitates, but the doctor insists, saying he needs to release the suppressed emotion to fully heal his ki.
A medical prescription for grief.
So they carry him over. And the visual here is so striking. He's carried in a bamboo chair back to the very garden where he used to run freely, writing poetry, full of vitality.
The bamboo chair is a physical manifestation of his diminishment. He is returning to the site of his former rebellion as a broken, compliant patient.
He arrives at the empty room. He sees the coffin, and he just breaks down, weeping until he's breathless. It is pure, unfiltered agony. But the true closure doesn't come from the coffin.
No, it comes from Zifuan.
It comes from his interrogation of Ziwan, Daiyu's fiercely loyal maid. He demands to know what Daiyu's last words and actions were. Now, Ziwan initially hated Baoyu. She blamed him entirely for the deception.
Yes, but when Zihuan sees him carried in, half dead himself, her anger dissolves into a profound pity.
She realizes he was tricked too.
She recognizes that Baoyu was not the architect of the betrayal. He was merely another victim crushed in the gears of the family's machinery.
So she tells him the truth. She tells him about Daiyu's final wish to have her coffin sent south. But the detail that truly breaks him is when she reveals that Daiyu burned the inscribed handkerchiefs he gave her and burned all of her own poetry before she died.
A destruction of the archive.
We need to talk about the poetic significance of this act. Why the handkerchiefs?
The handkerchiefs are one of the most vital symbols in the novel. Baoyu sent them to Daiyu earlier in the story to comfort her, and she wrote poems of profound longing on them.
They were basically love letters.
Exactly. More deeply, they represent the metaphysical debt of tears she owed him from their previous divine incarnations.
So burning them.
By burning the handkerchiefs and burning her poetry, she is systematically erasing the physical evidence of their intellectual and spiritual soulmate connection.
Wiping the slate clean.
Yes, she is wiping the slate clean. For Baoyu, hearing that she actively destroyed the archive of their love is the final, undeniable proof of her severance from him.
It grounds the metaphysical rejection he experienced in the underworld into a physical, historical reality. Seeing the coffin, knowing her wish to leave the North, and knowing she burned their history, it completely closes the loop.
There's zero hope left.
And only when hope is entirely eradicated can he begin to accept his mandated reality.
He accepts the preordained destiny of Golden Jade, which is his institutional marriage to Baochai. He realizes the rebellion is over.
And this is where the narrative execution gets genuinely horrifying. Because right after this scene of ultimate earth-shattering grief at the coffin, the pivot is so aggressive it gives you whiplash.
The relentless march of the institution waits for no one's grief.
Only a very short time later, we see the family essentially holding a board meeting. Grandmother Jia and Aunt Shu are sitting down, calculating the auspicious days and planning the schedule for the official consummation of Baoyu and Baochai's marriage.
Is back to business.
They're moving the pieces back onto the board. They're talking about throwing a party.
And we see how Baochai secures her victory, not with the wild, dangerous passion of Daiyu, but through relentless, gentle, institutional compliance.
She just wears them down.
She sits by Baoyu's bed. She offers practical advice. She embodies the safe, mandated societal role of a wife. And Baoyu, who is simply too exhausted and too broken to fight anymore, slowly succumbs to the comfort of the cage.
He gives up.
He allows himself to be assimilated into the machine.
And that leads us to the final haunting detail of this chapter. It is a fleeting moment, but it packs an incredible punch. Grandmother Jia and Aunt Shu are chatting, and for a brief second, the reality of what they've done surfaces.
A moment of clarity.
They remember Daiyu, and they begin to shed a tear. A moment of genuine, lingering sadness for the girl they discarded. And then, the door flies open, and Shifeng bursts into the room.
Shifeng, ever the vigilant CEO.
He bursts in, physically bent over, laughing hysterically. And she says, "Oh, don't cry. I just heard the funniest joke I have to tell you."
It's grotesque.
She literally bulldozes their mourning with a joke to forcefully distract them. The grief is, quite literally, laughed out of the room.
It is the perfect chilling encapsulation of the family's ultimate survival strategy. Sadness is an unproductive emotion.
It hurts the bottom line.
Mourning a discarded asset threatens the morale of the institution. Therefore, the reality of the pain must be actively paved over with a mandated forced cheerfulness. Shifeng is enforcing the collective amnesia required for the family to keep functioning.